It looks like it's bad news, boys, because the UK is owned by BlackRock. It may not be officially owned by BlackRock yet. I don't think there's been a deed signed and handed over to Larry Fink, the CEO of that terrible, terrible organisation. But we're getting there. It may not be de jure, but it is definitely de facto being run by BlackRock and BlackRock's interests involved in the World Economic Forum and a number of other things, which I will go over now. As we all know, Liz Truss's first month as Tory Prime Minister has been less than fruitful. Would you agree? Is that a good way of characterising it?
I don't really know what she's done.
Well, she tried to do that mini-budget that was trying to cut taxes a tiny little bit, and then also tried to do the energy price guarantee and other such things. And the media and the markets all S themselves over it. And then she kicked out Kwasi Kwarteng, her Chancellor of the Exchequer, and then immediately pro-Remainer, pro-EU, pro-lockdowns, pro-China, pro-World Economic Forum, Jeremy Hunt just happened to come out of nowhere from the backbenches and be installed as the new Chancellor.
So has she really done anything, or has she been forced to do this?
It certainly seems that she's been forced to do this. If anybody who's been keeping up with Prime Minister's questions, it finished right before we started. I was watching it and the whole thing is just an S show. It was absolutely terrible. It was just both sides screeching at one another, and Liz Truss really has not done anything to inspire any kind of confidence. The Tory party seems to be splitting from the inside out, which has led to articles like this from the BBC, literally just asking the question, Liz Truss, how might Tory MPs get rid of the Prime Minister? She's been in office, as far as I'm aware, for less than a month. And they're already just asking how they can oust her.
But that's what I mean, like, for what?
For causing, as far as they're concerned, for causing major economic turmoil with the gilts and the Bank of England buying loads of gilts and basically printing money to try and raise the pound. The pound almost crashed.
So I proposed some reforms. You guys made a big fuss, so I got rid of the reforms. So I must go.
Yes. The Tory party's a joke. The Tory party is an absolute joke. Peter Hitchens is completely right. It needs to be wiped off so we can have an actual right-wing party in the UK, because whatever the Tories are, they are not right-wing. They are not conservatives. And they're asking the question, how long can she survive as Prime Minister now? Not just how can they get rid of her, how quickly can they get rid of her, saying, and this is very interesting because it's just got testimonials from members of the Tory party, MPs, saying that they feel close to giving up, and after weeks of market turmoil and political chaos, the mood is bleak. It's done, we can't win, volunteered one minister, a Truss believer, former Truss believer I expect now, person has been dusting off their CV, accepting they will lose their seat whenever a general election comes. The debate in the last 72 hours, and this article's from 2 days ago, so things will have developed since then, has been how long Truss can survive in Downing Street. Small number of Conservative MPs have now called publicly on the Prime Minister to go. And, you know, if this is all an attempt to save the Tory party, it's done. You've had 12 years, done basically nothing but make the country worse, and that's after you were handed off from Gordon Brown and Blair, for God's sakes. I mean, I know we don't want Labour in, but the Tory party is just not effective at doing its remit anyway. So, you know, UK politics is just a big joke as far as I'm concerned. In conversations with the BBC over the weekend, many others have argued that Ms Truss would have to leave office before the next election. Some believe she could hang on for a few more months, but an increasing number argue she has weeks or even days left, even though there's no clarity on how it would come about or who would take over. And once again, she's not somebody who inspires confidence. She's not somebody who advertises herself as particularly strong-willed. I don't really know, other than what she initially came in with, saying that we want to shrink the government a little bit, reduce some taxes, which they tried to, and then immediately got told, no, you can't do that, and then had some random globalist shill installed in Kwasi Kwarteng's place. She did an interview with the BBC the other day as well, in which she was just apologising for everything. The interviewer was going hard on her, yes, but he was like, oh, what do you say to people who say that you have destroyed the British economy? And she's like, you know, I just want to say I'm sorry, we were trying to do reforms, but we went too fast. It's like, no, you need to stick by your narrative, you need to stick to your guns. How are you going to inspire confidence as a leader if you don't? Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. In fact, I just typed into my search bar, shortest, and it filled the rest in for me because it knew exactly the question that I was going to ask. Shortest serving Prime Minister in UK history. And supposedly, in this next article, she has to survive another 78 days to avoid becoming the UK's shortest serving Prime Minister. And I don't know that she can. She's completely weak. Her support base within the party is collapsing underneath her. Rishi Sunak seems to be gearing up with Penny Mordaunt to come around for another go at being Prime Minister. The voices from within the party itself say that they would prefer to have Boris back after they ousted him earlier on this year in the first place. The whole thing is a mess.
I just got complete indifference about the whole situation, in the sense that I don't understand why anyone's doing what they're doing. It's clear that the members did their thing, they did the vote. Prime Minister proposes a thing, goes belly up, let's say. Let's just assume that that was the case. And, okay, then she gets rid of the thing. And you would think in any other circumstance, in any other time, the MPs would be like, okay, yeah, someone wrong, all right, let's carry on. Got 2 more years till election. No, just everyone's backstabbing each other over what?
I mean,
literally nothing has happened and you're all going to kill each other.
From the most that I've heard is that this is speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. But as far as I'm aware, people are speculating that what's happened is that Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng weren't expected to get in. They get in and they go against the agenda that the rest of the actual people in charge of the Tory party want to go for, which is, globalization, world economic markets and such things. They go against that. They try and shrink tax revenue. They try and do all sorts of things. That immediately backfires, and they just take out Kwasi Kwarteng, who it seems to have been the more ideologically focused one of the pair of them, and put in Jeremy Hunt so he can just oversee it. People are calling him the de facto prime minister right now. Because, she had a vision that failed immediately, and he's come in and just flipped that vision and done everything the opposite, and she's not done anything. She's not done anything to stand by what she was proposing as the future of the Tory party or any of the proposals that she was going to do. It's pathetic.
Again, it's almost indifference just because it's like, what the hell? What was the point?
Yeah, and Jeremy Hunt has been covered by Connor on Monday talking about his connections to China and other such things, but here's what Jeremy Hunt did when he first came in on Monday when he was speaking about flipping the mini-budget that Kwasi Kwarteng put forward. So the government's energy price guarantee was originally supposed to be 2 years. Now it's going for 6 months just to cover this winter. The income tax cut, I think that's both for the 1% cut for the minimum band, 20% tax, going to 19%.
But it's
that's
so
been
nothing.
Cut.
Like, it's so absolutely nothing. And yeah, they're all like, purge the Prime Minister, reform the entire party. Why, she wants a 1% tax cut? What, are you mad?
Well, also the 5% tax cut for the top band, that's gone as well. That's remaining in place now.
That's all the money in the world, I heard.
Yeah, well, more than anything, I think it was a sign, even though they were only very small, tiny changes, that you're going in the wrong direction than what we want. So, out, done, gone. Yeah. Planned increases in the duty rates for beer, cider, wine and spirits will now go ahead rather than being cancelled, so everybody can expect to spend a little bit more at the pub, which is lovely. And there is potential for spending cuts, apparently, but I very much doubt this. Given that Hunt's...
Hang on, we know how much there is to cut, but they're not going to cut it.
But they won't. They won't, because we know a little bit that Connor and Rory have revealed about the background of the economic advisor that Jeremy Hunt is speaking to at the moment. But they will, don't worry guys, don't worry those. They have kept the cut in national insurance along with certain stamp duty cuts. Great. Fantastic. But his wife, as Connor covered the other day, is embedded in China. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt secured his wife a Sky News China Hour spot while away on cabinet business. This does not speak to split priorities and biases to me. Don't know about you. Having someone in charge of the finance of the country who's de facto prime minister be in bed with China.
For Mao.
No, that's no problem. Yeah, for Mao. Why not? And all of this turmoil, all of the ridiculousness going on, has even led Peep Show star David Mitchell, of all people, to write an article for The Guardian called "I Know Which One of Our Unelected Leaders I Prefer," calling for a return to absolute monarchy. Did you see this one coming?
No.
How welcome is it, though?
Yeah, okay, cool.
I mean, just put Charles in charge. He can't do a worse job. That's literally...
Actually, it's Charles.
I don't know if he would, though.
We'll wait 100 years and maybe we'll get a good leader.
Yeah, I guess we've just got to look to centuries for when English government can, go back to being at all competent or even just not embarrassing. But here's the main thing, which is that Rory found, through reading through a few articles, this one in particular, BlackRock portfolio manager Rupert Harrison is now the senior economic advisor to Jeremy Hunt, who by all accounts is now the de facto prime minister. In short, BlackRock is now in charge of the UK government. If you're not aware of who BlackRock are, they are, I think, along with Vanguard, the world's largest hedge fund investment company, who have, I think, 9.5, if not $12 trillion in assets, and they basically set the agenda for world finance. The other part, just to demonstrate this a bit more, from the Wikipedia pages, if you wouldn't mind clicking on there, thank you. Rupert Harrison, portfolio manager at BlackRock, and then scoot along as well. He also was involved previously. Harrison was hired as an economic advisor to Chancellor Jeremy Hunt in 2022. He was also, I think, from 2006 to 2010, he was chief economic advisor to David Cameron as Chancellor George Osborne. And let's carry on to the Guardian article. So they say Jeremy Hunt has recruited George Osborne's former chief of staff for a 4-person panel of experts designed to show the government welcomes scrutiny of its plans to cut borrowing. Rupert Harrison, an architect behind the former Chancellor's austerity drive. Do you remember all those cuts in spending that we've had over the 12 years of Tory rule?
Well, there was at the start.
At the start?
Yeah.
But now
back when the Labour Party left no money in the coffers.
I mean, that kind of helps. You kind of have to cut things, I suppose. But I've looked at it, and I think the budget deficit when Labour finished in 2010 was, 70 billion, and now it's 100 billion. So it's just gone up. Where's the spending cuts gone? I asked Connor about this, where the spending cuts were, and he said that the most that he could think of was when Theresa May came about, we cut police officers, because that's where I want my spending cuts to come from. But despite that, the actual things that were going on all throughout the Conservative Party run has been student loans going up, tax increases, more immigration to increase GDP, which has totally worked, increased NHS spending exponentially. But don't worry, guys. Benefits didn't rise in inflation for a bit. They rose with real wages. So that counts as a spending cut, right? Just not raising spending as much as you could counts as a cut, right? No, it doesn't. And I always hear lefties complaining about austerity, and I always just wonder to myself, where was the austerity? What was the austerity going on? Carrying on, as far as I'm concerned now, the globalists are just fully embedded in government, and they are determined to make sure globalist agendas go ahead as planned. And another thing is, a lot of this seems to be a slight distraction to me, purely because while they're also going on about all the economic stuff, they're not talking about immigration, making sure Brexit actually means what Brexit meant, which was escaping from clutches of European law. They were talking in PMQs earlier that they're still not cutting certain European laws and regulations and such. This whole thing is a distraction, but all of politics has become a distraction as far as I'm concerned, because everybody's complaining about smaller details and smaller issues when really, the elites are just consolidating power. Who are BlackRock? Some of you may ask again. So like I said, Connor has written about them before in this article, talking about the World Economic Forum and ESGs being the mark of the beast, because you should probably know what ESGs, if you don't already, are before I talk more about BlackRock. So he writes in here, ESGs prescribe companies to divest their profits into social, political and environmental action. These allowances are compensated with the promise of capital investment, providing their scores remain high and competitive relative to rivals. Essentially, ESGs appear to be an insurance policy for businesses to circumvent the tried truism, get woke, go broke, ahead of the US Securities and Exchange Commission. Alison Heron Lee has gone so far as to call for corporate executive pay to be tied to a company's ESG score. An ESG, measuring that social, political environment, basically just checks how woke you're being. Have you got the right amount of diversity? Have you got the right amount of equity? Have you got the right equity programs? Are the products that you're producing woke enough? So if you get higher scores on that, you get more money for your investment. If you don't do that, so it's basically just a way of ensuring that companies are pushing the correct message and pushing the correct agenda. Although some places have been pushing back against this, but more information on BlackRock in the next article. Also, BlackRock, bear in mind, their CEO, Larry Fink, is on the board of the World Economic Forum, so he's very, very, very much in bed with all of their agenda as well. They say in this article from ESG Clarity, which is trying to make some excuses for their business practices, that the firm, which has more than $9.5 trillion in assets under management, has ramped up the presence of ESG, its presence in the ESG world over the past few years. It's by far the biggest ESG-themed fund provider in the US, both by total assets and new sales. The CEO, Larry Fink, has for several years written in his annual letters to CEOs. So this guy, their CEO, every year around Christmas time, he will write a letter saying, here's what you should do. I'm just nudging you in the right direction. But what it really means is here's what you're going to do. Yeah, it means if you don't do this, you're not going to get the right funding from us, and you're not going to get our support, and you're going to go under. So he's setting the agenda to CEOs that climate risk is investment risk. In the most recent iteration, he made his case that stakeholder capitalism, one of Klaus Schwab's creations, is apolitical and not woke, despite constantly pushing woke causes. Most stakeholders...
Well, by definition, I mean, the definition of what this is collectivist ends without collectivist means, as Friedman correctly identified, because you then define as anyone who's tangentially applied to your business in the smallest possible way is part of a stakeholder in your business. So like the Chinese rice farmer, he is just as much a valid part of your business as the CEO of a bakery in Swindon, because the bakery produces global emissions. So that makes no goddamn sense whatsoever.
What, are you racist or something? Do you not care about the Chinese rice picker?
There's that argument that is made. And
no, that is the argument that is made.
There are others as well. That this means the government should basically control what you're able to do.
Yep. I mean, that's what it's all going for, and I don't like that these guys now seem to have pretty much control of the UK government, as far as I can tell. But they say most stakeholders, from shareholders to employees to customers to communities and regulators, now expect companies to play a role in decarbonising the global economy. Do you? Do you? If I walk into Greg's, am I thinking, God, I hope they're keeping their carbon emissions down? This sausage roll is going to taste far worse if it's not decarbonating the world as I'm eating it.
You ever see when you buy flight tickets, you can actually pay like a special tax now to decarbonise your flight?
Really? What does that do?
Nothing. You literally just give money to the airline.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a beautiful system.
Oh, it really works. It just works, guys. Few things will impact capital allocation decisions and thereby the long-term value of your company more than how effectively you navigate the global energy transition in the years ahead. And that's true when the government starts just telling you that you're not allowed to use certain types of fossil fuels and such. If you've not managed to navigate around that, you will fail. So that's one thing. I suppose that's true. Some in the sustainable investing would say that it's in the company's overall message on the importance of ESG rather than its holdings and funds that has attracted so much ire from state officials. And this article tries to make some excuses saying, well, actually, lots of the companies that BlackRock are invested in still make fossil fuels and still find fossil fuels. And it's like, yeah, that's not the only thing, though. They will also be forcing those companies to be more equitable, to hire a greater diversity of people from different racial and sexual and ethnic and gender backgrounds, all this nonsense. And then they will also probably produce less fossil fuels than they would have otherwise. But there is people pushing back. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, unsurprisingly, as always, seeking to ban state pensions from considering ESG factors in investment decisions. Good idea. And late last week as well, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita was the latest to attack what he calls woke causes, dedicating much of his public statement to BlackRock. So there are some statesmen within the US fighting back against it. Not in the UK, though. Not in the UK, though. The guy who's now Chancellor of the Exchequer is being advised by a man who wants to do this to our country. So, if only our statesmen had a certain level of backbone. Liz Truss certainly doesn't. The Tory party is falling apart, and UK politics is a big circus as usual.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the premium articles we put out, this one on Maloney, Russia, and the Progressive West, with an audio track for silver and gold tier members, of course. And if you'd like to find out what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.